Hello, everybody. You're very welcome to the Accountants Club podcast. This episode, I want to talk about something. It was a question posed to me a while back, and I actually thought about it quite a lot, but I think it's very important that we discuss it here today. And the question is this the defining decade for accountants in practice? And it's a really poignant question to ask because in many ways, I actually do believe that it is 100% the defining decade. And why would I say is it the defining decade? So I have a list of questions here that people have asked and that we have put together. And I'm going to answer the questions in the podcast as a way to work our way through this obviously this statement is of the defining decade. And the first question is, if we look back in 10 years, will we say that this decade is the decade that defined our profession? And why do I believe that? And I suppose it's a central belief for me because if we look at what's going on in the industry and we look at what's happening, we're all very well aware of AI and automation. And I suppose for somebody that's been in the industry for 40 years, it is difficult to say that there hasn't been change because there's always been change. I mean, we started with paper writing out T accounts, and a lot of us people listening here today will actually understand that. So we done the T accounts and debits and credits and debit what comes in and credit what goes out. And we had the very basic rules. And I think a lot of that gets lost in the current world, which is a pity also. But accounting as a profession as well has moved from, I suppose, in a lot of ways, being the guardianship in some ways and on the compliance side and acting as agents on behalf of our clients. That still happens and that's still really important. But with the change that happened in 2020 with the COVID, where everything locked down, that was a major shift in how we worked as accountants, and everybody was able to work from home and everybody became a lot more IT savvy. But that shifted, and then the next thing happened was we had the explosion pre-2020 and around that time as well with software and with moving to the cloud and moving online. And it was okay for us at the time because the journey of that took time. It took time for actually the software. Somebody would launch a piece of software and then we'd hear about it and then we'd go to an event and there'd be a big pizzazz at the event and everything would be fantastic and a big showcase. And then we'd implement the software. And we had time as accountants to catch up with what was happening. But that's all changed. Everything has shifted. And it's the speed of the shift is the thing that I won't say concerns me, but it's the speed of the shift is what's making this the defining decade in the industry. And I'm just going to look at the next question here now, 1 second. So the shift is happening now, absolutely, with AI and automation. But they're two very distinct. It's like sales and marketing. People sometimes mix them up. AI and automation are two extremely different and distinct topics that we should actually look at in its own right. Because automation has been with us forever. Automation has been here from the dawn of the internet, from the dawn of Excel. Everyone is trying to improve the way they're doing things. So I would say automation is a natural course of our industry. The question now is, what parts of the accountant's role are being eaten away by AI and automation? That is a really important one because the parts that are being eaten away are the bookkeeping parts. And they're the parts that we traditionally, as accountants and bookkeepers, we traditionally always had this idea that we would get in information and we would prepare the information, we'd prepare tax returns and we'd give it back, that historical information then back to the client, and we'd make judgment and assessments based on that. And it was a very time-consuming methodology of doing it. That's gone now because with the event of bank feeds where we no longer have to write up all of this stuff, we have the event of optical recognition, scans being taken of invoice and they're coming straight in. So that has naturally found its way that it will be done and gone and done and dusted. So that is being eaten away by AI and automation. And then the big thing is that compliance is now a commodity. And what does that mean for firms who still build their model on it? Well, if somebody is building their model based on a compliance framework, as we say in Ireland here, if you go to a funeral, it's traditional to go up to somebody and say, "I'm sorry for your loss." But I mean, that's the statement, "I'm sorry for your loss," because if you're building a firm around the old style compliance, I believe that within the next decade, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to have a Kodak moment. So you have to automate, you have to integrate AI and automation within your firm. And the question I'm asking is, what would I say to an accountant who tells me I don't have time for change and I'm too busy keeping up with deadlines? I'm saying watch your ship, watch the float, because this thing is going to sink. And it's a very big statement for to say it is going to sink, but I can categorically make that statement. I believe that if you're traditionally just working on compliance, I think the methodology of doing the compliance, I think compliance will always be here, and compliance is a big part of it. And compliance is a stable part of our business and will be into the future. But I think the methodology of how you produce the information, I think that's changed. And that's something that you really need to keep up with. And you need to figure out how to get on the journey for that. What happens to trust if clients realizes machine can do in seconds what we take hours or days to deliver? Yeah, so so the perception of an accountant role for a client, we need to understand how that perception has and will shift. But I'm not saying, I said it will shift and people will realize that. But the same thing happened when Ryanair came into the airline. They made flights cheap, affordable, and plenty of them. The commoditization of compliance is going to make it cheap, affordable, and it's going to make it that a lot of people will be doing it. But people buy from people. I mean, that's a statement that we really need to understand, and we need to keep that to the forefront. Like, we're a highly qualified profession. Our profession has a lot of ethics and standards, and that's always going to be in demand. In whatever shape or form, it's going to change too. I mean, with reporting, with sustainability, and everything is coming down the line now. It's just, traditionally as accountants, we're slow to change. We're slow to move with what's going on within the marketplace. The next thing then is the opportunities hidden in the threat. If AI is taking away what we've always done, where is the new value now we can create? So the value is everywhere. The value is a partnership model, a strategic partnership model to sit with your clients and say, I can help you see a little bit more into the future. I can work with you. I can help you collate your information. I can help you understand the information and the speed of that information coming to you. I can do a CFO role in your practice. You can outsource all of your information to me now, and I can do all of your books and records. I can meet with you once a month. So the role that we have traditionally been trained for in understanding and reading and making that information more useful to the client and a lot faster, because people now have this expectation that if I want something, I can ring Uber and get an Uber straight away. I can order food and to be delivered within 20 minutes. So this idea of waiting for information, that's the thing that we have to get over. And that's the thing that people, when they're sitting with us and we're sitting with them, beside them, AI machines can never replace that. They can never replace the human element of what we do. If I strip my practice back today to its purest purpose, what is it actually here to deliver for clients? Now, there's a good question. If I strip my practice back, what am I here to deliver my clients? I'm here to deliver protection, so that, the habits and the financial records and that, I'm here to help them with the protection side of it. I'm here to make sure that their information is appropriate from a tax perspective. I'm here to help them be tax smart. I'm here to help them understand the rules of the tax. I'm here to help them grow. I'm here to help them create plans for the business for now and for their future. There's so much, like, this advisory model, like the compliance model looks in arrears and the advisory model looks ahead. So whatever style of a practice that you want to make, there's a huge demand out there for that service. So you're here for the whole financial side of a client's business, you're here to help them with that. What one story of a client where my advice, not compliance, made a real difference? Well, there's loads and loads and loads of stories of that. But I mean, the one that always sticks out in my mind is a story of a lady called Helen. And Helen was one of the clients in the practice that we always, like, she was a kind of a favorite client. Maybe it's inappropriate to say that, but everyone has their favorite clients. If you were creating something new, you would always go to Helen with the new ideas. And And after a while, then Helen rang me one day and said, Paul, I'm sorry to tell you I'm leaving. And I said, so what? I mean, so why? I mean, and you get that knot in your stomach. I did not see this one coming. And I'd been at a 2020 conference just before and said, please do an exit interview with somebody if they're leaving. And I said, yeah, I'll try this. I said, would you mind sitting down with me and just talking through why you're leaving and that? So she said, yeah, no problem, I will. So we went out and sat down and she listed all the things that she was looking for. And I went, I do that. Oh, no, I do that. Oh, I actually do that. I can do that for you. I can do that for you. But the biggest problem was I didn't tell her that I could do all the stuff. And we sat down and went out to the house for the day. And it's many, many years ago. And we sat down, we looked at everything and we found a number of savings. And she went out and bought a pair of diamond earrings. So the diamond earring story is the fact that talking to your client and explaining what you do is really, really important. And it made a real difference. And at this stage now, Helen has retired and she's had a fantastic life. And she thanks me a lot for our part in that. And that to me is the story that will always stick out in my mind, when I retire. It's one of those things that just comes back to you. What does it truly mean to lead with advice? I suppose lead with advice is the whole new concept that we're talking about. And I have written a book recently. It's on Amazon called Lead with Advice, and it's talking about the profession and how we can change what we do into this more of an advisory role. The compliance to advisory word, I don't particularly like the phraseology, but it is always helping your client. It's always looking at how you can stay one step ahead of the client in terms of information, how you can be very, very proactive. You can combine all your services together and use strategic partnerships that the client, anything the client wants to know in business, he can get that information from you. He doesn't ever have to leave you because you have legal team as strategic partners, financial advisors, you have your own tax advice. So with all of that knowledge and advice, you need to understand where the client is on the journey from startup, growth, scale, and harvest. And each of those stages has their own particular problems and all particular nuances to them. So when you go from startup to scale, you cross that bridge, it has its own issues, scale to grow, grow to harvest. And our job is to understand and preempt those issues that the client is going to face at that point in time and then help them solve those problems. That's everything. That's advice in a nutshell. How can an accountant move from compliance to this agent mode in a single conversation? In a single conversation, the accountant can pre-look at the client's information, prepare a little bit of insight to the client, share that insight with the client, pick up the phone and say to the client, look, I've been looking at your information. I've found some things that I think we can have a chat about that can help you improve, some tax savings, some ways of increasing your profit. Would you mind coming on a phone call or come in and sit down with me? Don't charge them for that initial meeting. Sit down and have a conversation. And then ask the client 3 questions. Where are you now? Where are you going? And how can I help you get there? They're the 3 defining questions any advisor can ask. And any advisor, if they do ask those questions, they're going to have a surprise at the impact, because the client themselves, when we had clients out in COVID, and we were the change masters in COVID, we were the protectors. The problem is when COVID stopped, we stopped. And now we need to get back to that method of doing everything we can to help the clients. And that's a true advisory period of time that accountants, all of them around the world, were massively doing for their clients. And that's advisory in a nutshell. Here's a really good question. Do I want to be remembered as an accountant who filed on time or the accountant who changed lives? So I know my answer is I want to be the accountant who changed lives. I mean, that's always been the case. As you can see in the picture right behind me here, that's 3 generations of my family who are business people, and I'm a business person as well. And it's always been the idea of being in service and being of service for your clients, and that's really what we do. But that defines the whole podcast episode, really. What type of an accountant do I want to be? And another question in this one, this a little bit deeper. What does courage look like for an accountant today? Courage for me means stepping outside your comfort zone. And your comfort zone in your practice, just make one little step outside. It doesn't have to be massive, it can have to be a tiny little step. And when you make that step and you're doing something to help somebody else, a client, and you found some way of helping a client, Be brave, pick up the phone and talk to the client and explain that to him and say, and look, I've done this. I think this will help you. Come back in, and it's not about charging money for that initial conversation around, and sit down and just think at yourself, how do I feel after helping the person? And 99 times out of 100, you're going to feel very good for helping somebody else with no expectation of a return. And that really is the answer. If I continue as I am, where will my firm be in 2030? And if I step into advice, what new future could I create? There's a couple of parts in that one. If I continue where I am, and it depends individually where your practice is. I mean, a lot of practice will be grand and you'll be okay, and there's other practices that you're going to really, really struggle to create the value. And this deadline management and always stuck in a deadline won't work. And you're going to erode the value in your practice, and you're going to potentially lose a lot of your team, because a lot of the younger accountants coming in now want change and they want to understand what this new accountant's role looks like. So I have a little reflection for you now. And the reflection is, where do you see yourself on this path? Are you resisting to change? Are you surviving? Or are you leading? They're the real big, I don't know. For me, at times I think I'm resisting. At times I think I'm surviving. And at times I think I'm leading. But decide yourself within that, where you are on your own journey, within your own practice. And if you're in a path where you don't know where to go and you don't know the next step on the journey, there's loads of contact information from me. Reach out to me, have a conversation with me, and I'll explain to you what I've done in my own practice, and based on that, then maybe that can help you take the step to your next stage of your journey. And I want to leave you with one little statement. The numbers tell a story. So you're creating the numbers, they'll tell a story. But it's your advice that's going to change the ending. I'm going to repeat that. The numbers tell a story, but it's your advice that's going to change the ending. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here on the podcast. I look forward to chatting with you. I love receiving questions. Please reach out and ask as many as you like. Reach out to have a conversation with me. Bye for now, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.